Hey guys, what's up? It's S2 here. I have a tendency to watch YouTube videos to learn stuff, but I just consume it randomly. Don't necessarily always take the most amount of notes. So I figured I could start turning that into a positive habit by capturing these, saving them as React videos, watching these together, stopping through and talking through some of the points. And today we're going to be watching HealthyGG Gamer Guy. So right here, HealthyGamerGG is his channel. Doing the small stuff feels pointless is the video. Let's go ahead and give this a view and see where we can react where possible, and still give him the most credit of the video and practice fair use policy and all that other fun stuff. But anyways,
completely and totally worthwhile. As of late, I felt it becoming increasingly problematic for being both productive and healthy. Essentially, I set out with a goal of some kind, and if I don't complete them, I either waste absurd amounts of time trying to complete those goals, or have a heavy damper on my mood for the rest of the day.
So yeah, make sure your goals are accomplishable, achievable, specific, and don't worry so much about the goals. It's good to have goals, but it's more about the systems that you use to accomplish those goals. Because a lot of people can have similar goals, but if you don't actually take action, instead of just thinking about things, then you're going to be running around in circles. So come up with a plan and make action.
Which stops me from getting anything done. There are some situations that I think are worse than others. Trying to meet people, for example, has been coming up a lot since I'm just starting college. On days where I haven't met as many people as I liked or had a good conversation with anyone.
Yeah, and full disclosure, I went back to college when I was 23, 24. I felt like kind of older than everyone, so I didn't necessarily socialize with a ton of people. So my college experience was literally just go to school, do the work, come back home, do the work, and keep repeating. Every so once in a while we throw video games in there too. I didn't have the most productive time in college. So good to this person for recognizing they have things to address and taking the action to create this post. This is a great step. So this person, hopefully they get some good advice here. I'm sure he will. This guy's great.
I end up in a very drained state where I can't get a lot of schoolwork done. I feel like I just want to go home and sit around for a day, playing video games or doing something generally easy.
Yeah, that was me.
Usually by the next day, I feel fresher. However, there are times where I feel like this need for things to be worthwhile has been borderline addictive. Most recently, I've been spending hours staying up playing this gambling on a game I play to earn credits. It's not real money, and there's zero benefit to having the currency aside from saying that you have a lot. Still,
yeah, there's not a lot to say there, except hopefully you guys aren't running into similar habits. As far as gambling goes, I did used to play poker before I went back to school, and that was an interesting time. Never got quite addicted to it, but also it's not very productive. You're just sitting there taking money from other people who would lose it to someone else anyways, most likely. Whereas, we should try to support each other as a society and figure out ways to lift each other up. But on that note, I was thinking of starting a poker channel for entertainment, but we'd get in the same boat where I'd just be taking money. So I haven't actually done that. But all right, let's get back.
I keep playing. When I lose a bit, I feel a need to earn my way back up and end up driving myself further into holes. I get that gambling can be like that, but I find it odd that I'm so hooked even though the money has zero value.
Yeah,
I've also recognized it as a problem with porn usage, which is a problem I've been actively trying to deal with. Whenever I relapse, though, I get into this mindset of I won't be doing this for a while again, and binge really hard until I feel satisfied. I was wondering, does anyone else feel this way? How do I have this need for productivity affect me less?
I don't really feel that way.
Is this a healthy mindset in any capacity? So let's kind of take a quick look at this. So this is a situation where someone needs to feel like everything they do is worthwhile. So oftentimes you've got a particular thing that you want to accomplish and you want to use your time productively. So
in my opinion, not everything you have to do has to be worthwhile. In this book I was just listening to, it's better to take small steps forward than any steps backwards or no steps at all. So even if you're just, addressing that you have a goal and making progress towards those in a small way, then I think you know you're in the right direction. It's easy to set very high goals. Like, I want to create a mountain, and then you only create like a small little hill at the end of the day, and then you're just like, but that's not enough. Create smart goals. Don't overwhelm yourself. Stay away from distractors like the gambling and the porn. I forget. Stay away from distractions. I was gonna say distractors, but yeah, distractions. Cool.
We want to use our time productively because then we're like good people, we're healthy people, we're successful
I'm at
people.
150%, so I don't know what the
Let's be
advice is
productive.
there.
Everything's got to be, I can't waste any time. And then what happens is if everything we have to do needs to be productive and we can't waste time, something weird starts to happen. If we don't live up to some of our expectations, we'll either waste a lot of time trying to accomplish these goals because we got to do it, right? Or we'll have a heavy damper on my mood for the rest of the day.
Actually, essentially, I set out with a goal of some kind, and if I don't complete them, I either waste absurd amount of time trying to complete those goals. My first instinct is actually, are you trying to complete the goals? Is that what you think is wasting time? Because it doesn't sound to me like they're trying too hard to actually complete the goals. Like, it would have been nice if this person said what those goals were and how they were wasting time trying to accomplish them. But usually, like, just doing anything towards a goal is better than doing nothing at all. So do anything towards your goals. Taking 100 good photos is better than trying to finish or trying to take one great one. So there's actually a study about that. There was a student or a teacher, he divided half the class. I read this in Atomic Habits earlier today, so credits to him. But half the class, whoever took 100 photos at the end of the class got an A. If you take 90 photos, you take a B. And then the other half of the class, you only have to take one great one. So the lighting has to be good, the composition has to be good, the subject, the exposure, the angle of the camera, and all that stuff. And at the end of the class, apparently the majority of the great photos were in the group that just took 100 but weren't necessarily focused on quality. Because the more you do action, you start to learn things and feel better about stuff. And apparently I am clipping too much on this screen. Maybe not. But yeah, just do 100 things mediocre and eventually you become good. So this guy, if you come up with those goals, come up with systems. So let's see what he says about this.
The day. And then what happens is we'll oftentimes get into these situations where we're not quite sure what's going on. And then we fall into all these other kinds of behaviors like playing video games, doing gambling stuff, pornography.
Yeah, which is not making time towards the goal. So you're wasting absurd amounts of time not completing the goals. And yeah, the gambling and the porn, that doesn't feel like it's doing anything for society. So, at some point, I mean, I guess usually it's like a deeper thing. Like, why do you feel like you're watching these things? Like, I don't know. Generally, more confident people don't fall into those habits. So why do you feel like you're not confident, I guess? Not a licensed therapist at all. So I'm not going to go too deep into that line, but he is. So
pornography. So let's try to understand what's going on here. Okay. Let's try to break down, first of all, where does the feeling that you need to do everything worthwhile come from?
Exactly.
Secondly, how do we sort of manage that feeling? How do we deal with it? Thirdly, what are the consequences of this whole cycle, both psychologically, neurologically, reinforcement-wise? And
probably
lastly,
not going to get through all the video.
What do we do about it?
Because we're already at like 9.5 minutes.
Speaking, I exist.
Let's get to a good wrapping
point. When I
point.
go about living my life, I will create an expectation.
So existence is good, and naturally existing, we end up with expectations.
So this person, for example, will talk about, let's say, I'm in college, and so on days where I haven't met as many people as I liked or had a good conversation with someone, I end up in a drained state. So let's try to understand what that.
So with this, days where I haven't met as many people as I had liked, I would try to set a personal goal to introduce myself to 5 people, to have a meaningful conversation with 2 of them. It's specific with 5 and 2. It's measurable. Did I introduce? Did I have a meaningful conversation? I guess meaningful is not very specific. Did I had a conversation that lasts longer than 5 minutes where I learned what the person was going to school for? Obviously, it's achievable. It's realistic. It's time bound every day. If that's what this person needs to feel that sense of accomplishment towards their goal, then do it every day. Or they can just like stretch it out and do that over the course of a week or something.
That means. So we create an expectation for ourselves. And then let's say we start here and we try to live up to that expectation.
You talk to that many people.
If we live up to that expectation, fantastic. But if we fall short of the expectation, this window leads to disappointment. This is a cool app.
I need one of these,
now, once we have this emotional
really
disappointment,
cool for my side
which
panel.
remember is a feeling, our brain, make myself disappear for a second. Once we have this emotional disappointment, what we're going to do is cope with it. Okay? So this is how the brain sort of deals with
I guess
emotions.
I can use
we have
spacebar.
Coping. Bring myself back. So let's take a look at that. So once I feel emotional
coping.
disappointment, let's say this is shame,
Easy to fall into bad
right?
coping
so
habits.
Feeling like I've fallen behind. Look at all those other people. I start making comparisons. All those other people are making friends, and I'm not making friends. And then once I start to do that,
Comparisons are usually a recipe for disaster. All the great leaders that I know say they rarely compare themselves to someone else, but they compare themselves with who they were yesterday. Obviously, you want to have a sense of where that is. Like LeBron James probably compared himself to people as he was becoming LeBron James. But I guess to know where you want to end up, you have to have a sense of what that destination is. And to get there, there's a little bit of comparison. But then, like, once you know you want to go to Florida from New York, then you need to plan the travel route and how you're going to get there, where you're going to stay. And then don't think, this person's getting to Florida faster, because it's all part of the adventure of getting to Florida that ends up being life.
To deal with these emotions with like some kind of emotional, let's make sure okay. So I have to deal with all these negative emotions with things like video games, gambling, the unholy trifecta. And this person even points out that even when I'm gambling, there's no real money involved. So why do I keep doing it? I'm not really gaining anything. And that's because that makes sense, actually, interestingly, because when it comes to gambling, for example, our brain has certain circuits that get activated when we gamble. When we activate these circuits when we gamble, they actually suppress our limbic system. So it doesn't matter whether money is real or not. Like the act of gambling and the random reinforcement schedule and getting some kind of victory is sufficient in suppressing the limbic system. So this explains why even if you're not getting any money, you're still going to be gambling, because it's doing the...
Video games cater to that same sense of accomplishment. Where there's a little barrier to getting things and there's like a clear line of achievement. Let's do this small mission, get 5 experience. Let's do this small mission, get 10 experience. Let's do this, you get a reward of a big sword and a fancy new helmet. Life is always not that clear. And when you create some of those, or you finish some of those small goals, you don't really get a reward at the end of it. So the brain has a harder time assimilating that with a behavior that it wants to do more of. Because in the real world, those achievements normally come a lot longer. Like LeBron James played a whole lot of basketball before he started getting paid millions of dollars for it. But he did get, self-worth in playing those games and getting those small wins. So it's important to understand your milestones that you are accomplishing and really find worth in those.
The gambling is doing the job that it is set out to do.
So don't let your brain
deal
win
with all of this emotional disappointment. And so what I would imagine we'd see in this person is that...
Well, I guess don't let your limbic system win. Is the limbic system the... I think there's the limbic system and the frontal cortex. And the frontal cortex is the higher level thought one. So don't let the limbic system win. Try to... think more of with your frontal cortex. That evolves as you get older, up until like the age of 24, I think, is when it kind of slows down. And from there, Yeah, well, let's not talk about that.
The more they fall short of their expectations, the more they engage in this sort of gambling behavior and falling behind and all this kind of stuff, pornography, video games, etc. So now we've got another issue, which is...
So in that sense, your expectations should be climb one step of the ladder instead of jump on the top of the building, because you're obviously not going to jump at the top of the building in one fell swoop. It's better to, create that ladder and then climb the ladder. And if it's a really tall ladder, maybe you need to train to make it all the way up. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Is that once I've fallen short, this translates into the future. So if I've fallen short by this amount, let's say, what that means is that going forward, I start at a deficit. So now when tomorrow rolls around, let's say, here's the baseline, here's what I want to accomplish, here's the expectation, but I'm actually starting over here. So since I only made one friend yesterday, I actually have to cover this whole distance.
Short?
So even if I move from here to here, let's say I do this much, how does it feel? How much have I fallen short? Now I've fallen short by this amount, right? So even though I made...
There's actually a concept of this in the stock market. So if you have $10 and you make 100%, you're at 20%. So you're at $20. You made 100% and now you're at $20. And then the next day, that only has to fall 50% for you to be back at what you started, and then another 50% for you to be at $5. And then if you're at $5, you have to make 200% to be back at $20. And that feels very often unachievable, which is why investing is hard, and which is why goals can sometimes be hard, because it's easier to regress sometimes than it is to take significant leaps forward. And thus, these kind of patterns that sometimes emerge where you fall into the limbic system and your brain likes to take the path of least resistance, and, you pick up your phone, which before even just using a smartphone used to be hard. You used to have to, type in a password, go through all these hoops to turn it on. And, it used to be slow and clunky. And now you just look at it and it turns on with your face, and you get all these notifications at the top that make you feel instantly gratified, which is good sometimes, but oftentimes it's easy to get into bad habits where you just dwell on small notifications instead of bigger, more substantial goals.
Progress, it feels like I fall short. And then this carries over to next time. Now this is below the baseline. Now today,
it's easier to fall
short.
short.
Let's say that I work extra
than it is
hard,
to jump
right?
ahead.
So yesterday I did this much. Today I'm going to do this much socializing. That's a lot more.
Yeah, you literally just
now
have
the gap
to
is this
not
much.
do anything.
And so something
to
very
fall
bizarre
short.
starts to happen. If you really look at this, this is progress. This is progress. This is progress.
Yep.
This is progress.
Be mindful of your progress.
All of these are progress. So now we're in trouble because despite progress, we feel like we're failing. Now, once we feel like we're failing, enter the pornography and gambling and video games. Now we're in a lot of trouble because when progress does not positively reinforce behavior, where does that leave us? That's a huge issue because even though I'm doing all the right stuff, I don't feel any sense of accomplishment, which in turn means that I'm not going to be reinforcing the actual behavior that's improving my life. And this is how you get stuck in this trap. And the bigger this grows, this gets so big that eventually everything you do has to feel worthwhile. I cannot waste 1 second of a single day because I've dug myself into such a pit that I need to be extra productive every...
Don't fall into traps where you feel like you need to be extra productive. Moral of that story.
Every moment of every day. Every time I go out, I need to make 10 friends. Every time I go out, I need to make 15 friends. Every time I study, I need to get an A+. It all needs to be... I've wasted so much time. This gap is so big.
My ADHD kicked in right there. And
how do you
for
make
some
up
reason,
for
I
this
was
gap?
checking a notification.
Everything has to be worthwhile. Because if I'm so far behind, I can't
Remove the
afford
redundancy.
to waste any time. So this is something that's kind of interesting. People who are successful can afford to waste time. People who are behind cannot afford to waste time. The more in the hole you are, the less your time is worth, the more miserly you are about it. It's huge irony, right? So if I'm behind, if I'm 28 years old and I haven't graduated from college and I don't have a job, how much is my time actually worth? Not very much. If I'm 28 years old and I'm in surgical residency, how much is my time worth? It's worth objectively more. Who feels guiltier taking vacation? The 28-year-old who doesn't have a job, whose time is worth objectively less than the surgeon's, or the surgeon who's 28 and can't wait for a vacation. And so now we get into a lot of very interesting problems. The first problem that we've already talked about.
That's an interesting concept. So he said the successful person is more able to spend time on vacations than someone that is in a big hole. I don't know, in a way, the person that's in the big hole, every time they fall into those habits where they're playing the games and whatnot, in a sense, they're kind of taking their own mini vacation. Maybe they just don't realize it and are putting it in the wrong frame of mind, but yeah. And then this also makes me think of some single parents, that are working 3 or 4 jobs just to make ends meet. They have a much harder time taking a vacation than the surgeon does, because they don't necessarily end up with the same set of skills as the surgeon, which is kind of a shame in a way. I don't have an answer for it. I'm just kind of thinking about it. And maybe that's something I'll think about more in the future, but how to help those people that are willing to put in hard work progress even more, so that they can value their time better, if that makes sense.
About is that despite progress, we feel like we're failing. The second problem is that we become I
guess maybe in that case, those people aren't necessarily having progress because they're doing the same repetitive thing kind of over and over and over. Where in certain fields, as you do things more often, you get more opportunities to move ahead, such as in engineering. You start off as a junior, then you go to mid-level, then you become senior, then you become principal. And with each of those, there's a decent pay bump. Wherein, if you're working like 3 waitressing jobs, it's harder to, become the manager, the GM, the regional, unless you put yourselves in the right opportunities to create relationships with the manager, to become the assistant manager and tell them like, hey, I would like to learn how to do the books more, do the schedules or order the food and whatnot. Yeah, it's difficult. But I guess it's better to put your effort into advancement than to stay on a plateau. If you ever notice you're plateauing, keep trying to make those baby steps forward, and not the regressing into coming home and not learning how to become the assistant manager or, something like that.
Miserly with our time. And as we become miserly with our time, we can't take chances. If we can't take chances, we become paralyzed in terms of
You can always
options.
take chances.
I can't even apply to college because I need to get in. So the application has to be perfect. If the application has to be perfect, I have to spend so much longer on it. I can't afford to do good enough. This leads to paralysis. The more we get paralyzed, the more further behind we fall, and the more...
So that falls into what I said earlier. Taking 100 good photos is better than trying to take one great one. The problem with college applications is they cost money. So, and they probably do that to keep people from just sending out thousands of applications to every single school. And obviously the better schools are going to charge a higher application fee. The more selective schools like Harvard, and even just the application fee is in a sense a natural selection criteria that the creators of Harvard instilled to put walls up for harder people. I did not apply to some of the schools I wanted to apply to simply because the application fee was so high. And in a sense, I kind of felt like a failure then, but I still applied to other schools that were local to me. So take action instead of falling into paralysis of this application needs to be perfect. I know a lot of people that, even if they don't go to college, they end up in a trade school, or they end up just learning skills like getting a real estate certificate and making advancements on their own. So that's all fine. This video is already kind of long, so I think we're just gonna watch the end of this segment, and I'll link to this, and feel free to watch the rest of it.
Or we end up being miserly with our time. And if you can't experiment, you can't take chances, it's really hard to dig yourself out of the hole. The last thing, which we've also kind of talked about, is that the more that 1 and 2 pile up, the more we end up with emotional coping mechanisms. So we've covered this kind of gambling, gaming, etc. And the problem is that these in turn like make it harder to actually make progress, right? So these then sabotage us. So what do you do about this? Abandon expectations.
So that's the stay away from distractions. I guess we've said it multiple times here.
So this whole thing starts with this idea right here. Here's my starting point. Here's my expectation. If I move this amount, this is falling short. If I have no expectation, this is all a win. We started today here. We ended today here. This is a win.
So lower your expectations?
If I have an expectation, this is a loss. Do y'all get that? Like, this is mind-blowing once you really get it. That the same amount of effort or progress can lead to positive reinforcement or negative reinforcement, all based on the expectation. So there's kind of a corollary to abandoning expectations. You can't fix you can't fix yesterday's problems. So let me put it to you this way. If I'm 28 years old and I'm applying to college, or I'm thinking about applying to college, and then I think to myself, oh my God, I don't know if I should apply to college because I don't know what to major in. What if I major in the wrong thing? And then I spend 4 years in college, and then I'm 32 and I have the wrong major. Then I'll have wasted 14 years of my life. So I can't afford to get into the wrong major. I have to figure out what's the right major. So then I end up doing research. I never apply. I'm trying to figure out, okay, what's the career? What do I do with my life?
So actually about that, if anyone is watching this, I don't know if anyone will watch this, given that it's one of my first React videos, but yeah, selecting a major can be pretty overwhelming, and I think I had some of that problems when I was in college. You know, am I selecting the right major? Do I need to switch majors? What can I do with this when I have it? In my engineering field right now, there's actually a lot of people that don't have computer science degrees. You know, they were able to take the major and learn other relevant skills and still get in and apply. Like, there's someone I know with a English major that I've worked with, a lot of electrical people, a civil engineer. I mean, a lot of people still have engineering backgrounds just because of the mindset it takes to become an engineer. It translates very well into other engineering disciplines. But even, you know, I think I've worked with a person with an economics degree, a civil degree, a political degree, and they've all kind of taken the strides to pivot their degrees and their skill set based on opportunities that they saw. So I guess it's not so much what degree you select, but the mindset that you ultimately carry yourself with, and the ability to see opportunities and create systems to put yourself towards those opportunities you're interested in.
I'm stuck. But the key thing is that, like, you're 28. You've already wasted 10 years. Call that L. Like, you gotta eat the L. There's nothing you can do today that will make up for the time that's already passed. And it's our attempt to make up for the time that's already passed that really creates the problem. That's what actually paralyzes, because how can I afford to lose 14 years when if I've lost 10? But we don't think about it as losing 10. We think about it as, okay, if I make it worthwhile, then those 10 years may not have been a waste. We try to get those years back. And that burden becomes so impossible, because how do you make a decision for a major that makes up for 14 years of spent time? Impossible. You set yourself up for failure. So whatever you've screwed up in the past, you've screwed it up. It's over. Let it go. Can't fix it. That hurts though. Oh my God, like, you're telling me it was a waste? Like, I'm not telling you it's a waste. You're the one who's telling me it's a waste. All kinds of benefits, but you refuse to see them because you're trying to make.
So moral of the story is, if you suddenly wake up after, you know, quote unquote, wasting 10 years of your life, you probably didn't waste. You probably learned a lot of stuff in that time that maybe you're not seeing as positive things. You know, you can reflect on them, but it's best to, like, hey, I want to change and do something different than what I'm doing. and not keep falling back into the same patterns. And again, you know, come up with those smart goals in your systems and start making positive change. Change is the hardest thing, and recognizing there's a need for change is even harder. But if you do that, then, you know, just take action. That's kind of what I'm doing right now. Instead of just mindlessly watching these videos, you know, we're kind of sharing, watching them together, and putting thought into what is being said.
Make up for it. So you can't solve today the problems of yesterday today. This is kind of general.
All right. I think that's a good wrapping up point. Let's go ahead and write that as our final bullet point. You can't solve the problems of yesterday by not doing anything today. So, last thing, take action, have fun, and all right, see you guys. Bye.